What's up, guys? Haven't uploaded a video in a while, but wanted to kind of get back into it. I think I'm going to keep having the raw, kind of uncut videos on YouTube, and then I'll probably start hopping into short form. Um, I still want to have the long form stuff as more like Christian business owner, like how do the two tie in together, and then updates on my app and markets if needed. I think I want the short form to be about more about like the markets and the app and like kind of uh, like taking you on my entrepreneurial journey, because I think I'll save like the biblical stuff for long form, because I don't really want to have I don't want to use God as like a way to get clicks just to get people to my app. And so I'll just keep the short form, you know, as like markets and entrepreneurship and stuff like that. And then if people want to dive deeper into like my roots, that's where they can find the long form. But one thing that I've been kind of studying a lot recently is the realm of like self-criticism. And I have like my notes right here, but um, like this is kind of what I've been like learning and studying and having Bible studies on and stuff like that. So like self-criticism and the concept of self-criticism is not like a new struggle for Christians. It originates out of shame and pride. It starts in Genesis, where in Genesis 3, both of their, I'll just read Genesis 3. Genesis 3, 7 through 10. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths. And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" And he said, "I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, and I hid myself." So, shame creates self-consciousness. They were afraid because they were naked. And this automatically gets us thinking into ourselves. God didn't change when the fall happened. Adam and Eve changed because they became self-conscious and their view of themselves changed. The first inner narrative after the fall was that something is wrong with me. Another example is in Elijah, 1 Kings 19, 4 through 8. But he himself, Elijah, went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he asked that he might die, saying, "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." And he lay down and slept under a broom tree. And behold, an angel touched him and said to him, "Arise and eat." And he looked, and behold, there was at the head a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. And he ate and drank and lay down again. And the angel of the Lord came again a second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you." And he arose and ate and drank, and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. So self-criticism can kind of stem from fatigue, isolation, and emotional strain. Elijah confused his emotional exhaustion and fatigue for his spiritual well-being. And it's really interesting to see what God does in this passage. He doesn't condemn him or scold him. Like, how could you, ask for me to take your life when all this I've given to you and I have all these plans for you? Like, it's not in a critical, like voice or anything. Like, the first thing he does is he feeds him and he gives him rest, which is super interesting. So the next part is in David, or like the story of David. In Psalm 42, verse 5, he says, "Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you in turmoil with me?" So David notices his inner state and recognizes it rather than like let it rule over him. He recognizes the criticism, and he outwardly questions his thoughts and he brings it to God. And he is self-aware about his self-awareness. In the Pharisee and the tax collector, Luke 18, 9 through 14, he also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and treated others with contempt. 2 men went up into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed this: God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. So the Pharisee is confident in himself and he lacks the self-awareness. The tax collector is self-aware, but he's not self-loathing. He doesn't hate himself. He just sees God's perfection and sees how imperfect he is, and he sees the difference, and that's where he beats his chest and says, God, be merciful to me, and he just cries out because he doesn't know what else to do. Jesus affirms his honesty and he does not confirm his self-inflation or contempt. So you just have to kind of be realistic with yourself. You can't inflate your ego too much, but you also can't be too contemptuous on yourself. And so you just kind of have to there's two sides of the extreme, and you kind of have to balance that like a lot of things. And so this highlights kind of an honest humility on yourself. You can know you're broken, but where the sin runs deep, grace abounds all the more. And so you have to kind of know that you can't hate yourself too much because of your brokenness, because God has forgiven you. Another example is Peter after denial. Luke 22, 61 and 62. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the saying of the Lord, how he said to him, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. Peter becomes fully aware of himself and the gap between who he thought he was and who he actually was when the opportunity arose. And Jesus does not treat this with anger. Kind of the same thing as with Elijah. The awareness of himself hurt Peter, but he was not self-condemning on himself. He wept bitterly. He wasn't self-loathing, anything like that. In Psalm 139, 23 and 24 says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. And so this reveals that awareness is the safest when it's God who searches for it. So this psalm is saying, God, search for me, so that I don't have to. And then God can reveal those things in you. And this type of request can only be made out of humility, not out of searching for a way to condemn yourself. If you're just looking for ways to hurt yourself, that won't be edifying towards the Lord. And so then it kind of gets into how do we discern what is righteous judgment on yourself and what is right versus what is self-loathing and self-hatred. Tim Keller says, the essence of gospel humility is not thinking more of myself or thinking less of myself. It is thinking of myself less. And so a question to ask is the thought or criticism drawing me closer to God, or is it drawing me deeper into myself and looking at yourself? You're absorbed into yourself. If you're obsessed with your performance or hard on yourself and failure, it's probably pride operating in reverse. It's probably you thinking that you're better than you are, better than you should be, further than you should be, when you're really not. And it's a kind of pride that works backwards, whereas it's not self-inflation, but it's self-contempt because you think that you are further than you should be, or you think you are not as far as you should be. And so that criticism is kind of rooted in pride, and that's where your identity comes in. C.S. Lewis says the real problem of the Christian life comes where people do not usually look for it. It is the problem of our pride. This pride and self-criticism is an obsession with ourselves. Self-criticism and self-exaltation are two sides of the same coin, and that's like pride and self-obsession. Pride is exalting yourself above others or above God, and it's giving yourself the credit for something that God has accomplished. And so we're just stewards. Everything is owned by God. And so if we're just stewards, then it's not really our accomplishments. And it's essentially self-worship when you're doing that. Psalm 10:4 says, "In the pride of his face, the wicked does not seek him. All his thoughts are, there is no God." Matthew 5:3, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." The poor in spirit are those who recognize their spiritual bankruptcy. We often get self-critical when we are being perfectionist and trying to be perfect. Perfectionism stems from pride. It forces you to become self-oriented and to stray away from the humble reliance on God. And anxiety is a form of pride, thinking that your plans for the future is better than what God has planned. Our desire to control everything, including the future, is fueled by belief that our competence is best. Pride is an easy sin to be deceived by. We absolutely despise it when we see it in other people, but we like to justify or overlook it when we have it ourselves. And so, a way to reframe self-criticism, or when you're in that mindset, something to think about, is that we are all broken and sinful. And so, how can we, in our distorted judgment of reality because of sin, choose to hate something in which God has said he is loved? And like, if the God of the universe can choose to show eternal grace to us, then maybe we can like show a little grace to ourselves. Acts 11:9 says, "What God has made clean, do not call common." And so that's kind of like to know your worth, and know that a perfect God has forgiven you and that he is showing grace to you. And if he is perfect, and like we can't even comprehend the distance between us and God and like how sin separates us. But if he is perfect and he chooses to have grace on us, and he's the God of the universe, then I think in our human bodies, we can have a little grace towards ourselves. And so some steps that we can take, self-criticism is one of the biggest things I struggle with. And so this is for me that I'm just sharing. How can we overcome it? First, you have to recognize that the self-criticism is a sin in and of itself and confess it and bring it to God. We also have to remember that our condition before Christ saved us is a state of brokenness, and we have to remember we have to remember our condition. And Psalm 40 verse 2 is a very good verse that kind of can make you picture it in your head. It says, "He drew me up from the pit of destruction, out of the miry bog, and set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure." We have to remember that the abilities that we have been given to us. They are not our own. We have to be stewards of them, and it's all not of our own doing, so it shouldn't be rooted in pride. 1 Corinthians 4:7 says, "For who sees anything different in you? What do you have that you did not receive? If then you received it, why do you boast as if you did not receive it?" And so, a little bit of encouragement is Philippians 1:6. "And I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ." And so, that's kind of what I had in my notes. That's what I've been studying this past week or two. So I just thought I'd share it. But yeah, on the app, I have not been able to make a lot of progress. It's been a very busy past couple weeks with school and work and everything. And so I have not been able to do much. I have a couple things that I need to be working on with it and fixing, But the biggest thing that right now that I'm procrastinating on is putting out more content and like marketing it more. So that's been kind of why I've been wanting to get into short form. I watched a video on it today, and um, I think it has a lot of good ideas that I can kind of take and start making those steps. I will probably start filming short form and just do YouTube shorts and then release it on Instagram, but through trial reels so that I can kind of see what works or if it works before kind of my followers see it. Yeah, that's kind of all I've got right now. I'm gonna try to record more, and I want to keep everything kind of raw and uncut on the YouTube side so people can kind of resonate with it more and watch me as I get more comfortable around the camera and get a little bit better at talking to the camera, because my girlfriend said that she watched the video, and one thing that I can probably do better is not be as monotone and like kind of be a little bit more animated, I guess. Sorry, I got slightly interrupted, but yeah, I need to work on like kind of having a little more like not be so monotone like in my voice and stuff to make it a little more entertaining. But that's just something that I guess I need to work on and get more comfortable with. But thanks for watching.